Good.
Tady máš ještě
ano.
Just gonna see here. Oh. Move this one closer here. Yeah, it's gonna work. That's probably better like this.
How big is usually the final file, video file?
They're quite compressed actually, but I think it could be 1 gigabyte at the end for an hour. It won't take the whole thing, but you tell me when you clear.
I think we can start.
Yeah.
And I think people usually tend to trickle in, so we'll see. Because we have people waiting on the stream, and it's usually around 100 minutes, so we don't keep them waiting too long. Tak můžeme? Tak dobré odpoledne, vítám vás na poslední přednášce Věda kontra iracionalita v tomto našem sisyfáckém akademickém roce. Dneska naším hostem je Philippe Longchamps, původně Kanaďan, ale teď už 20 let žijící ve Švédsku, výborný pedagog, který mimo jiné se stal pedagogem roku Švédska a také učitelem dějepisu Švédska v loňském roce. Budeme dneska mluvit o tom, jak je důležité zapojovat kritické myšlení nejenom jako předmět sám o sobě, ale napříč všemi předměty v rámci vyučování a jak on to jako učitel dělá. So, hello everyone, welcome to the last lecture of our cycle, Science Contra Irrationality, and our guest tonight and our guest speaker tonight is Philippe Longchamps, originally from Canada and now living in Sweden for 20 years?
21, yeah.
21 years. He is a wonderful lecturer and an amazing teacher, which he can prove by the number of awards he's received in the last years. And he's going to talk about how it is important to implement critical thinking into all the subjects and into how we think about education as a concept. And we're very happy to have him here. So welcome, Philippe, and we look forward to your lecture.
Děkuji.
Děkuji. So just to explain, Philippe was here in 1992 and actually still remembers a lot of Czech.
Yes.
And so he will impress us. He will impress us with his Czech ability during this evening.
Not so much. Men okončitý výstup a nástup dveře se zavírají. Příští stanice, teacher competence and the combat against misinformation. So thank you very much everybody for coming despite the terrible, terrible weather. As you can see, my hair is all wet as well. So yes, this pouring rain, it's the perfect timing to be indoors in Science Academy. Thank you so much for inviting me to the Czech Republic. Actually, it's my first time in the Czech Republic. When I was here last time, it was still Czechoslovakia. So, and thank you very much to Jirka and to Claire for the nice guided tour today. And I look forward to spend more time with you and answering your question at the end of the presentation. Please give me a sign if I go too fast. English is not my native language. You probably hear my accent. French is my native language. I'm from Quebec in Canada. So just like you, well, most of you, probably. English is my second language. Of course, I had to learn Swedish when I moved to Sweden, and I can speak a little bit of Spanish. So you can ask your question in language of your choice. If you want to ask your question in Czech, I'm sure that Claire can translate it without any difficulties. So, are we ready? Great. So, first of all, I am the co-author of Transformative Education. What we're going to talk about today is mostly concentrated in one chapter. And actually, there's even a chapter about artificial intelligence. When we wrote that book, we thought that that would come maybe 10 years from now. In November this year, we had a pleasant surprise that it was here already. And it's going very fast. So I updated the presentation, original presentation I made in Vienna last year to include more of this now. And I'm here to learn from you as well, because you probably have some input. I also contributed, together with Classroom Think Tank, to the book How to Foster Creativity in 21st Century Education. It's been translated into German, and it's already at a second edition in German. The book Transformative Education will be translated into Chinese. That was the great news, and hopefully one day you're going to have a Czech version. So today we're going to talk about critical thinking, but why should you or anyone listen to someone who was brought up in a strict Catholic boarding school in Canada in the 1980s speak about the importance of critical thinking in education? Well, before you ask the question, yes, this boarding school has been closed now. Many of my classmates have been abused by the priest there, and that is one of the things that contributed for me to distance myself from the church. But the thing is that I was never immunized against gullibility at school, and it took me decades to painstakingly escape this mental cage that was preventing me from becoming a free thinker. I mentioned it today when we were walking, just the fact that I believed in ghosts and I had some induced fears prevented me to really explore the beauties of nature. So it was a long process, and with this, after a while, I moved to Sweden. I've been there since 2002. And I was the first immigrant to be recognized as the Teacher of the Year in Sweden in 2002. I was finalist for the Global Teacher Prize in 2021. And last year I was named the History Teacher of the Year in 2022. By the way, today I had a huge lesson in humility, because I have learned so much from my hosts about Czech history. And that's very humbling. You realize that we don't have enough of one lifetime to learn everything there is to learn. So again, I'm here to learn from you. And like I said before, I'm from Sherbrooke in Canada. And in Sweden, it gave me a lot of exposure to get these prizes. I like to use a multimodal approach. I will talk about this in class. But the main goal that I want to use this kind of mixed approach, try to use different ways of interesting everybody to make it as an active learning activity to learn in school, and to make it in a transdisciplinary way. You can see now in my hands I hold a robot that can solve the Rubik's Cube, because I'm not smart enough to solve it. So I said with my students, why don't we build a robot that can solve it, and now they can compete with it. I love to use hands-on material, but everything is based on problem solving. And problem solving starts with good critical thinking skills. So here it's at Uppsala University, and I'm also the co-founder of IntegriTeach, together with Charles Graham, my co-author, and I'm overseas director of the Society for the Advancement of STEAM Education. It's based in South Korea. And with Pontus Bergman, I am a member of the board of the Swedish Association for Science and Popular Education, Vetenskap och folkbildning. But what needs to be done? What is urgent in education right now is, I think that we need to develop and improve in evidence-based teacher training programs, providing the right pedagogical tool to better nurture students' higher order thinking skills. So there's also a need for well-developed programs to follow teachers untrained in or that feel uncertain how to deliver adequate teaching of critical thinking. The problem is that in Sweden, it's great, we do have critical thinking in the school curriculum. It is in most subjects, we have to teach it to the kids and we have to evaluate them. So they're graded on their critical thinking skills. Great thing. And it should be like this in every school curriculum in the world, especially at the age of information. So, the problem is that teachers are not trained to explain what is critical thinking. So I think that we need to put a lot of emphasis and a huge effort into better prepare these teacher training programs so everyone understands what it means. So the idea of teaching critical thinking is a way to vaccinate students against misinformation, disinformation, myths, and conspiracy theories. Or at least we need to give them their first dose of skepticism while at school. And here I'm talking about healthy skepticism. We don't want to develop a generation of cynical thinkers. We need critical thinkers. People who reject everything and people who reject science in the first place is very, very risky. We've seen this a lot during the pandemic, and people base their opinion often on anecdotes. What worries me the most, and here I was fact-checked by a journalist, is that only 9% of 15-year-olds in the OECD countries can make the difference between a fact and an opinion. And this is really scary. I thought it was around 48%, 49%, but this is absolutely outrageous. Why? Why our kids are so gullible? And maybe our generation is even worse. I would be curious to know the numbers for our generation. So if we don't know the difference between a fact and an opinion, they spend hours on TikTok and on Instagram and on different social networks, and they see snippets of 15 seconds of things that are often opinions. And they base their own opinions based on something that is not tangible proofs. There's no tangible proof, or it's not fact-based, or alternative fact-based. So again, what needs to be done is to train educators on the importance of differentiating facts from opinions and equip them with adequate understanding of what constitute verifiable facts by reinforcing their understanding of the superiority of the scientific method while developing epistemic responsibility. It's our duty to ask the right type of question, encourage the students to question everything, and encourage them to question what the teacher is teaching them. They should be our number one fact checkers. It requires us teachers to have a high level of humility, to say that we can be wrong, that while I'm teaching or writing something on the whiteboard, I need a group of people checking if this is true. And this makes it an active learning activity. Before, when I was in school at this Catholic boarding school, we were not supposed to contradict the teacher. Well, in my classroom, I encourage the students to contradict what I say, and then it can lead to a good debate. And it enhances the class. They're not always right, but then it brings a nice conversation in class, and it makes the learning more active and much more sustainable. Because when the students feel that an answer comes from within, they will have the impression that they contribute to something, and it will make it lasting. They will remember it forever because it comes from them. So sometimes you don't just need to give them facts. You need to ask them to come up with these facts, and I will demonstrate how to do it today. First of all, teachers need to understand and explain what is the difference between these three terms. I personally avoid using the term fake news in my class because this term has been hijacked by people with really bad intentions. I don't need to name who. You know who I'm talking about. There's plenty of them. So this fake news idea has become too wide and too easy to use as a weapon against people who disagree with you. So I think that first step in schools, we should already explain that misinformation is not something that is done on purpose. Sometimes we see disinformation and we share it, and it's probably the most common one. People will see something on social network, they will say, oh, that's interesting, and they share it, but they don't understand that it is misinformation. That is, it's a false statement or it's a false news. But disinformation is, and that is not only for the teachers, but the teachers have to explain it to the kids that it is something that is made with the intention of causing harm, something that is not true, and you're targeting an organization, a person, or an association like yours, for example. This is the definition of what should be a fake news. And there is malinformation, which is what politicians often use, which is something that is true, but it's used to inflict harm on someone or an organization. So already there, by developing the vocabulary of the kids, and I know these terms exist in other languages, to differentiate, to avoid using this term that's been hijacked by people with bad intentions, I think we are contributing to a better understanding of this phenomena. So teachers have to be trained to be aware of their own assumptions, logical fallacies, and cognitive biases. And for this, you need to exemplify. So in teacher training, I think that people need to be aware of what is the most important in class. There's plenty of different logical fallacies, but start with the most useful one. The ad hominem, which is a personal attack. I live in the country of Greta Thunberg, and I see a lot of men my age targeting her because she's a girl, because she has autism. They say things without really attacking what she is talking about. They attack the individual, her appearance, her gender. And this is great because once you explain it to the teachers and the teachers explain it to the students, it creates a nicer climate in the classroom. Because then they are able to identify when someone says, oh, my classmate here, let's say Charlie, we shouldn't listen to him because he looks like a homeless guy. That's a personal attack. They're not attacking the argument or the thing that he tries to bring in my classroom. And so if the students are aware of that, they're policing each other and they say, hey, that's an ad hominem. It's a logical fallacy. It's not valid. So they reject that. So they self-regulate and it prevents bullying. So all types of intimidation, once you teach critical thinking in class, you see that it's progressively becoming a much more secure environment for everybody. I think that is very important. Again, the straw man argument, to misrepresent someone's word, to twist them to your own advantage. I mentioned the anecdotal logical fallacy. We've seen so many during the pandemic. My favorite example is someone would say, my grandfather smoked for 65 years, 1 pack a day, and he lived to the age of 97. So smoking doesn't kill. But yeah, my grandfather is a statistical anomaly. It will happen, but in average, there's still a risk. So we need to make people aware of that because the more we explain it in school, the more we explain it to the young people, then we can have a long-term, lifelong learning experience. And of course, a slippery slope. Quick example here, we hear people say somewhere, I won't say in which country, but in the media say like, oh, if we let homosexuals, if we give them the right to marry, then the next step will be that people will have the right to marry their cats and dogs. So we know that this is illogical, but explaining this to the kids by providing examples as we teach different school subjects in an integrative way, in a transdisciplinary way, we are investing in a much better future. But there's not only the logical fallacies, there's also the cognitive biases. And of course, these are shortcuts in thinking, irrational judgment. The study of Dunning-Kruger is not the most scientific one, really, but there's a lot of people who made great quotes about that. And my favorite version is the one by John Lennon. And he humbly says, the more I know, the less I know for sure. So often those experts are much more humble than the trolls on the internet who have very little knowledge of something, but they're full of confidence and arrogance. So in this case, once you explain this Dunning-Kruger effect, that sometimes people are overconfident in their level of competence, it brings more understanding in the classroom. And when you talk about different subjects, it's encouraging the kids to develop their rationality. The halo effect is really important for teachers to learn about that, because often, like I said before, the students will have a tendency to believe everything we say. I mean, we ourselves, like we have some idols and we believe everything that the person we admire will say. It's human nature, it's normal. But if the students are a captive audience, and you don't tell them they have the right to contradict you, you need to fight the evil of the halo effect, because they need to challenge what they're learning if they want to learn in a sustainable way. Then, of course, you all know the placebo effect, and the most famous one, the confirmation bias. We have a tendency to cherry-pick the things that will reinforce our preconceived ideas. And the more we explain it to the students and the teachers, I think we are going in the right direction. So what I meant by epistemic responsibility is that we have, it's our duty to teach students that it's very easy to get caught up in this kind of digital bubble of confirmation bias or echo chamber. I myself I'm aware of this bubble. I know that the algorithms are working against me sometimes. They will have an influence on my opinions. But the more you're aware about that, and the more you make your students aware about that, again, we're making progress. But I use, personally, and it's in the book as well, different steps in how to teach the art of critical thinking, or I should say the science of critical thinking, because more studies are needed for that. There's 5 steps. Simply, alteration is the first step. You have to teach the kids that it is okay to change your mind when presented with tangible facts. Too many times people are discouraged to change their mind, and I think it's only idiots who don't change their minds. I mean, you need to be able to evaluate what is valuable information and be mature and be able to do that. Then there is verification, which is simply the art of fact-checking. And also, next to this, you need to exchange with the people who have different opinions. So create a debate. Then you have to synthesize something that is quite complex sometimes, need to be put into a much more understandable way. And like I said before, provide plenty of examples and show their interconnections. So the more we provide examples to the student, the more they will themselves make relevant connections. I mean, conspiracy theory thinking is making the wrong connections between things, or making connections between things that are not necessarily related. But by using a 5-step approach like this, we are going again in an evolutionary timeline. So we're not presenting them with examples without having the skills that they need to be able to become good critical thinkers. So I mentioned before that we live in an age of information, but a lot of this information is available. And one of the key during this 5-step process is that we need to show them where to look without telling them what they should see. Like I said before, it's so important that they feel that the answer comes from within, because this is sustainable. For example, you might forget everything I say or everything you read in a book about something a few days later, but you will never forget how the feeling of satisfaction you had when you made a realization, when you discovered something, when you yourself look for the answer. This is the sustainable way. So teachers are not just providers of information, they encourage the kids to search, and this is much more sustainable. It gives results. We can measure it. So I think that it is super important for every country in the world right now to include critical thinking in their school curriculum for the good of every society, because it has become as important as literacy and numeracy in the information age. They spend so much time, the youth and we ourselves spend so much time online. We need to equip them with the right skills. So now I will start by giving a few examples of what we can do with teenagers or younger people. It's been tried. I mean, I've been doing this for 10, 12 years in school now, that since we have critical thinking included in the curriculum. And we use this to reinforce previously acquired knowledge. So imagine now you're in my classroom, and you're in grade 7, 13-year-old kids, and we have been working for a whole year, mostly on geophysics. Because like I said, at our school, we love to work in a transdisciplinary way. We see that in the book about geography, there is almost the same content as in the book in physics. So we say, why do they need to have 2 tests and hear the similar things from 2 different teachers twice? We could teach them together, co-teaching, make 1 test or 1 assignment about something, and then they will see, again, these connections that are necessary to become a good critical thinker. So by learning about, here I will give the example, because this is one of the examples that the students bring during this exercise. I put the magnetosphere, the magnetic field around the Earth, and the northern lights, aurora borealis. We know their connections here, and during the whole year in grade 7, we talk mostly about geophysics, the inner forces, the outer forces, the atmosphere, and we talk about why the Earth is a sphere. We explain everything, the different like subduction zones or sprinting zone. Now I'm looking for the word in English. Fault lines and like accretion zones. So we talk about how the continents have moved. We talk about, like, we give all the facts that are part of the curriculum. So textbook learning. But one morning, by the end of the term, after teaching them everything, I tell the students, guys, this morning I have to come clean. Everything that I've been teaching you since the beginning of the year is a lie. I only do this because it's my job. It's the government who wants me to tell you this. But now I'm coming clean because it's my last day today. And the truth is that the Earth is flat. And now the whole class, some of them are skeptical, some of them they have the halo effect, they believe what I say. But then I create a shock wave in the classroom, and they have 1 hour, they don't know that, but they have 1 hour to re-educate me. So, sorry. So 1 hour to re-educate me, and even when I do this, I wear my United Nations shirt because it has a flat Earth there. And then I present them and I give them flashcards with all the arguments from the Flat Earth Society. And I pretend that I believe that the Earth is flat. I explain all the arguments from the Flat Earth Society. But why do I do this? There's a risk to that. But I do this because, like I said before, this will reinforce their understanding of what they've learned before. It's a very good way to do revision as a group. It makes an active learning activity where the students will start to, those who are a bit skeptical, will raise their hand and say, yeah, but what if? And then they will bring examples. Now we have the spotlight sun. And so in this sense, by using the arguments of the Flat Earth Society as a method to reinforce the student understanding of the scientific method, it brings results. And meanwhile, it's an excellent way to verify if the previous acquired knowledge, the things that are in the textbook, in geophysics, in the physics and geography textbook, are assimilated sustainably. So the most confident students will start by saying, like the example I just showed you before, but how would it work with the magnetic field if the Earth was flat? And it's not only the obvious. I mean, already at the age of 13, they're not only talking about the curvature, like most flat earthers talk about. They bring arguments about the different time zones. They bring about seasons. They know that the Earth is tilted 23.5 degrees, which is the cause of the different season and the cycle. They will ask questions even regarding the ice ages. And it's great to see this. So at the end of the class, everyone contributes. And sometimes those who are the most quiet, it's their time to shine now because they have like paid attention. They took a lot of notes and they looked through the notes. Yeah, but what if? And then at one point, I have no argument left. So they feel empowered. They're smiling. They're happy. They talk about this at home with their parents when they come. And now at the end, I say, okay, you guys, you convinced me. I'm wrong. The earth is round. And it creates so much joy. The kids have like a sustainable learning experience because it's important to have playful learning, yes, but also like it has to be fun. School cannot be like just being passive and listening. That's why I count on you in the period of question to really interact and bring in stuff. I said I'm here to learn from you as well. So this is one example out of many. I explain it in better and more details in the book. And every year it's a bit different because we have different groups and some people pay attention to different things. But it's one example. But I said before that we talk about geophysics in grade 7, and earlier on in the year, I have to work continuously with critical thinking. And I think that with the smaller kids and the younger kids, it's great to start with pictures, even before they start to read and write. And when we talk about tsunamis, I ask them to Google the word tsunamis. Here, the students realize now, luckily, Google has become a bit better with that. But out of these 18 pictures, there's only 5 pictures who are real pictures of tsunami. So you can test it now. I think it's been improved a little bit, but a lot of the pictures are clickbait. And actually, the kids are very good at identifying clickbait. So this is something that you need to do continuously. I don't think that critical thinking should be a school subject. I think it should be part of every subject, because it's a way of thinking. So before the advent of AI, I was teaching the students to use Google search to try to identify this. And you make this into an activity, again, where everyone can contribute. So I asked them, start your laptops and try to find the original. They know, they understand that this is impossible. They know that in the English Channel, there's not enough volume of water to create a wave this size. It's ridiculous. But when you click search Google for image, they will be able to find sometimes the original picture of the wave and the original picture of the coastline here. But the most common one, you've probably seen it before, is the famous squid from the Fukushima squid, the one that was affected by radioactivity. And when I was talking about misinformation, well, someone probably made it as a hoax with Photoshop, but a lot of people shared it thinking it was true, including my own father. So I received that picture, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? And obviously, for a trained eye, you see directly that it's fake. Or it's disinformation, I should say. But use that picture in class, and as the student, it could be in any subject. It could be geography, it could be in biology, or even in language. And ask them to do a search. I mean, talking about language, students will have to become really good at writing to write the right types of prompt in AI, for example. And even here, when they learn these skills, in class, after less than 10 minutes, some students, I found one picture and I found another one. And then they look, and together they contributed as a team to improve the knowledge of everyone and their critical thinking skills. So clicking Google search for image, you make it a fun activity again, and they found this one, this big squid in Spain, and this whale in Santa Barbara. So, sorry, this one is in Chile. The fake news here was that it was in Santa Barbara because it's in the Pacific Ocean and it was affected by Fukushima's radiation. Again, great experience. The kids will talk about this when they come at home. And that's what we want to create. If we want to make a sustainable learning experience, we want what they learn in school to come at the dinner table at home. We want students who are proud to say, I've learned something new today, and they re-educate their parents, which is great because you want to learn something from someone you love. And if your kids are starting to develop the critical thinking skills of their parents, it is a positive side effect of teaching critical thinking in school. So we are investing and putting our effort in the right place. You're all familiar with this masterpiece, Théâtre d'Opéra Spatial, beautiful French name. And now the debate is, if AI can fool a jury in an art contest, so an AI-produced painting wins the first prize, of course our students will be able to fool us teachers in writing incredible essays. Luckily, now teachers are aware that there is like AI output detector, and we can easily identify when it's AI produced. But this is food for thought here, because critical thinking has taken a new meaning since November 2022, because AI came in the game. And what I said about like image fact-checking, it's getting harder and harder. But making people aware of this is very important. So the use of artificial intelligence in education requires continuous development of critical thinking skills. And as this technology has had a significant impact on many aspects of an increased interconnected society, it won't become like this. I don't think teachers will be replaced by AI. A lot of tasks, yes, but school is not only to receive information and acquire knowledge. School is also a place where you learn to socialize, and I think it's going to become much more like this. By creating an active learning situation, the school will change in the future, and that's why we need to include more and more of this participative approach. Now, we still have Photoshop artists who are making these types of things. But we have a new tool. We don't need to do like the Google search anymore, because we have to teach students how to use Google Lens in a good way. Not only to look, oh, these shoes, like, where can I get them? How much do they cost? I mean, that at first, Google Lens could provide this type of information. But AI can also be used to spot disinformation. And it's pretty easy. You will get, like, in less than 2 seconds, you can scan this image with Google Image, and you will have access to the original. So again, you can debunk these attempts to create disinformation simply by using AI. Again, there is a lot of risk with that, because if we start to put our trust in AI all the time without critical thinking, there's a risk that even AI will, like with human nature, will turn it into a cult. We will believe everything it says blindly, and we don't want this to happen, especially not with the new generation who's like going through school with all these new tools. So it requires a massive discussion with our students. And you know what? As this technology is improving, as they are in school, it's hard for us to keep track of everything. They will flip the classroom, and they will teach us, teachers and adults, a lot of interesting things with artificial intelligence. But that's why I say critical thinking is extremely important in education. Here, another reference to flat Earth. So image recognition, it needs a trained eye. The students will be able to identify this, and that's why I think it should start very, very young. We should have, like, in some subjects, like doctor some pictures and ask them to identify if it's real or not. Like this one, sometimes you see a pilot like this wearing sunglasses, and the students can spot, oh, we see the tarmac in the reflection of his sunglasses. So, but some of them are really, really skilled. You can even see the reflection of the clouds on the paint. So fact-checking, very important, and it's the phase I was talking about in the five steps that we use to teach critical thinking in my school, that we are calling, not alteration, sorry, I'm now a bit tired after that long walk. I'll get back to it, it's going to come back. Of course, AI is getting so good. Between November and March, it wasn't that good. When you probably all tried Midjourney or DALL-E, and this one is from Midjourney, excellent picture. But for a little window in our history, there was something that was quite easy to check for, to look for, to identify AI-generated images, and it was the hands. You see, like here, even though there is a really buffy kid in the background, I don't know why. This image was generated by AI, and it was quite obvious that the hands were always weird. But now, the problem has been solved, so we will see, like in the future, when we see a picture like this, we will know that it was made between November and March. Because it's over. It is like in history. Now you will have some anomalies sometimes, but the norm is that they can make perfect hands. And we can't use this as a way to identify AI anymore. It was true like a few months ago, but it's going so fast and it's improving so fast that we have to make the kids aware of that as well. So these freak hands that we saw generated by AI, the problem is solved and everything is A-OK. So we don't have that problem anymore. But it's not a problem for AI, but it's a problem for us teachers now. We need to make them aware of other things. Same thing for text. When students were generating text with AI, it was pretty easy for us to see these telltale signs when it says at the end of the conclusion, overall, comma, or like the paragraph that starts, it is really important too. We started to kind of like feel that it was a bit fishy. And students are very original. Even like excuses for late assignments have been generated by AI. So it's the new, the dog has eaten my assignment. So you can see like that it's not their own words. So we see a lot of attempt of tricking us. And that's why teachers require good training in critical thinking as well, not to be too gullible. An example I mentioned in Vienna, when I teach history in grade 7. By the way, I teach history, geography, and technology. So these subjects, they can integrate very well. But together with my colleagues, also, we integrate the 16 different subjects we have in Sweden. But sometimes you need to teach the kids that even the most reliable sources, like the Oxford English Dictionary, is probably the most reliable source in the English world. But it still contains disinformation. Like received ideas like that Julius Caesar was born with a C-section. By the way, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the first successful C-section was performed here in Prague in the 1300s. So that's thousands of years before, 1,300 years or more before. And the strange thing is that we know that Julius Caesar knew his mother, that at that time it was a way to save the baby when the mother was dying in birth. And he knew his mother, Aurelia, pretty well. She was still alive when he was 45 years old and when he was trying to invade England. So, luckily, the online version of Oxford Dictionary has changed that. And, but the problem is that the new printed version will be published only in 2037. So we still have something printed that is not quite reliable. Nevertheless, maybe 99.9% of everything that's in the dictionary is fact-checked and reliable. But there will always be these anomalies. So we cannot use this, like I said before, as an anecdote to say that the Oxford Dictionary of English is bad. It's one little case. But again, it's good to take everything with a grain of salt. So for this, we teachers have to be trained to recognize our conscious and unconscious bias. I'm the first one to have biases. And the key to provide the right kind of training is to develop critical thinking skills with the teachers in the first place. The problem is that in Sweden, we do have critical thinking in the curriculum in most subjects, but we don't train the teachers on what it means to teach critical thinking. We still think it's just making a nice reference list and talk about like why you use Wikipedia and what not. But it's more than that. Critical thinking is to develop a way of thinking. And also that, I mean, there's teachers of, like, on the spectrum, and there's teachers who are also interested in paranormal things, and they still have to grade their students on critical thinking, and on weekends they will see mediums, or they will try to heal with their hands. And so we need to really make an effort to educate the population in general about, like I said before, the superiority of the scientific method of inquiry. If we fail to do that, well, we'll continue to have people who believe nonsense. Here, I don't pretend that I know what happened to John F. Kennedy. That's not the point here. I humbly say that I don't know. But I want to talk about proportionality bias. We're all aware that big events must have big causes. In the mind of someone who believes in conspiracy theory, this is often the case. So when we talk to our students, when I said like the phase of exemplification, we need to provide examples without telling them really what to think, but just sow a seed of doubt in their mind to make them reflect so they can reach their own conclusions. And here you can basically ask, like, why do you think that 61% of Americans believe that there was a conspiracy behind the assassination of President JFK, but very few Americans believe that there was no conspiracy, there was a conspiracy behind the failed assassination of President Ronald Reagan? Well, to me, the answer is, I don't know, maybe you can tell me. What my students are saying is that, well, it would probably be much higher if it would have succeeded. I said, maybe you're right, yeah. Why would you think so? And then they say, oh, but we've learned this during the Cold War. I mean, the Soviet Union, the Cold War, it could have been the KGB, it could have been like Cuba, it could have been like his political opponents. So they say, yes, absolutely, it could have been. But now that someone died, it's much more traumatic. And then they start to think, yeah, but maybe that's what happened also for those who believe that the World Trade Center, 9/11, was an inside job. And then you don't say it as a teacher. They come up with this idea because they make like relevant connections. And that's what I meant by making relevant connections. If I would have said in a condescending way, you're wrong to believe in this, it wouldn't work. If it comes from them, it is much more sustainable. So when I try to do this, to exemplify, I try to take things that are not too close to them, that they don't have an emotional like bond to, because then it becomes really tough. So I know, for example, in a classroom, you're going to have parents who are anti-vaxxers. So I don't take that example right there. But when I talk about Dr. Jennings and the importance of the discovery of the vaccine for smallpox, then I put the emphasis on the importance there without talking about the debate that's going on today. And of course, we can mention Andrew Wakefield. And when we exemplify, we have to talk about the conspiracy theories and the conspirational mindset. Now, you're all familiar with Alex Jones and the Great Gay Frogs and the Pizzagate and the Monsanto. And, well, some things are... we need to investigate them, absolutely, and we need to ask the students to be curious. But there's an ex-QAnon member that said that conspiracy thinking hooks the brain because it feels like critical thinking, even though it isn't. Often you will meet those people who believe in conspiracy theories. They think that they are the critical thinkers, but they're not aware of their own biases. They're not aware of the logical fallacies they make. So it has to become a part of every curriculum in the world by investing in putting effort in training the youth to develop these skills. Then we are also like helping the next generation, the parents and the grandparents, because it will lead to discussions like this. It will lead to debates, and we want to encourage that. And yes, the inclusion of critical thinking as a transdisciplinary competency in all school curricula in the world might prevent these kinds of things from happening in the future. as we build a society with worldviews based in reality instead of fiction. Here I just gave two simple examples. Paul Carrison, who was using silver chloride colloid to cure, as an alternative medicine, something he read on the internet, and he turned himself blue. That's from an interview at Oprah. Now he passed away, but it's not that killed him, but he looked like Papa Smurf. And of course, we talk about January 6th and QAnon and the QAnon shaman. Again, people are willing to give their freedom, to defend their freedom. But in reality, they've been tricked in believing a lie. And because they lack critical thinking skills. One thing that I found outrageous is that there are websites and blogs and YouTube channels that are targeting the youth with nice graphics and simple things to understand, short 3 to 4 minute videos. And we know that with the attention span of this generation, it is very powerful. Especially now on TikTok, sometimes it's just 15-second snippets. But here, it is clear that they try to forge the opinions of the students. This is from the United States. And this is a great example of disinformation and propaganda targeting kids in school. And it's being used by some teachers who don't know better in their class, mostly in the United States and in my native country of Canada. However, I use them too, but not for the same purpose, not for the same way. I use them to ask the student to go to the next step. Now, they see the outrageous titles of some of these videos. They see that sometimes they even invite people with a good reputation to talk. And like everything, sometimes it's going to be like a broken clock. A broken clock will be right twice a day. So sometimes they do have something that's factual, but most of the time it is wrong or it's disinformation. But you look at this, we watch a couple of videos here. There's even some who are talking about, like I said, something that doesn't concern them personally. It would be about the Dark Ages. And you can start early by showing them some videos there to develop their critical thinking. But the teachers who are using this to educate the kids are irresponsible. We need to use this and understand that there is a lobby behind that. There's a lot of things that we ought to investigate. But this is just one example out of many. And you ask the students, now, when you see this type of information, try to find who's behind it. And now you ask them, can you do the research? Do your own research. So you ask the whole class, find who's behind, who's financing these videos. There's an interest group probably. Like in everything, they will go to the source. And the students found out that it was the Wilkes brothers. They made a fortune in fracking. Of course, they have a vested interest in preserving the established order to keep on selling fossil fuels. So the students themselves, I didn't say anything. They come up with this and they say, could it be that they don't want things to change too fast? They want to sell more, they want to make more money? Yeah, maybe you're right, maybe you're right. So then you create a discussion in class without having me telling them about who's behind it. And there's a lot of organizations like this that we should look who's behind, who's the interest group behind, and who's the lobby pushing for that. So the largest donors of Prager University, which, by the way, they were asked to remove the word university by YouTube because it was as much as a university as Trump University. So it's a YouTube channel. So now it's just called PragerU. I invite you to watch these videos. It's not pretty. But like I said, once in a while they will have a good one. So when I talked about this alteration step, the first step when they're very, very young, now I'm going to ask you to participate. The alteration was to teach the younger kids that it is okay to change your mind. But now I'll show you something that I do with teenagers. And it's not very scientific here. It's just like something to prepare them to be able to change their mind when presented with convincing arguments or with scientific facts. But in order to do this, usually you have to first of all go to the emotional self. You have to talk to their hearts. So when I'm introducing this activity, like now it's also explained in the book, the teacher tells the student that they need to imagine being omnipotent, like God, and prescient, they can see the future. And they have the unique superpower to foresee and intervene to prevent a terrible incident from happening, but only for one event at the time. So then the teacher presents them with 3 hypothetical alternatives that will force them to rapidly make a difficult choice. So it can be on the whiteboard or it could be on a projector. You bring 3 questions, but they don't know that they will vote for something and that you're going to change each statement later on. So it's something that has to be done in different steps, and it's a fun activity. So here, imagine you are teenagers, okay? And you have a very, very short time to make a decision. Let's say I will give you 10 seconds to make a decision. I will pretend that you are super powerful, that you can prevent one of these incidents from happening. Are you guys ready? Yes, good. All right, so alteration phase starts by saying these terrible events will occur at the exact same time in a few minutes from now, and you can only use your superpower to prevent one of them from happening. You have 10 seconds to choose one of these 3 options. So you present option number 1. You have the power to prevent an earthquake in a country far away from here that will kill 100,000 people you have never met. Imagine now you're a 13-year-old. Second, you have the power to prevent an airplane crash in a nearby airport where 200 strangers will perish. And option number 3, you have the power to prevent a car crash in your hometown that will kill 2 people you don't know. Now, let's say, who would pick option number 1? Great. Who would pick option number 2? Who would pick option number 3? Well, in a classroom, believe it or not, there's always different. Of course, most of the time, option number 1 is the most popular in this round because altruism is part of human nature. And I think that humans are born good in the first place. And then you change the rules. The goal is to make them change their mind with new information. Now you say option number 2, it's still the plane crash, but one of the passengers on the airplane that is about to crash is the future love of your life, your true soulmate, that we were destined to meet and who will make you happy for the rest of your days. Now imagine you're a teenager again. Who would still pick option number 1? Raise your hand now. Who would pick option number 2? And who would pick option number 3? Good, okay. But in between all these rounds, you have to ask the students to argue with each other, and there you exemplify the bandwagon effect as well. Because then some people, the loudmouths, will be able to convince them that no, it's more important this and that, and you have a nice debate in class, and you point out that this is also a logical fallacy, that you're forced or peer pressured into believing something. No, you have to base, with the information available, you have to make your own opinion. Not adopt the opinions of others, especially those who are using argument from authority. But then, round number 3, you add something else. You say, number 3 now, but one of the individual in the car crash in your hometown turns out to be your best friend. And now you see in the classroom, they look at each other, my best friend is right there. So who will pick option number 1 now? Who would pick option number 2? Who would pick option number 3? So you see, most of the time, this exercise can go in many, many rounds. And the goal is that everyone will at least change their mind once, have someone maybe change their mind too. And now they say, okay, it's okay because now there's more information coming in. You can design your own questions like this, but you always improve. And then later on during the exercise, you ask the students to add more data, to say something. And there's always in the airplane, there's the future baby Hitler, and he will crash. And then there is there's anthrax in the car trunk, or they are very, very creative. But by making this, it becomes another fun activity where the students are creative. and where they are learning that it's okay to change their mind. So next time they will be presented with data or scientific facts that will contradict their pre-established ideas or their prejudice, then they will be more inclined to adopt the scientific method of inquiry to say that this is something that I should trust. Because often some people who are like in the conspiracy mindset, they will reject, they use this bias to reject and cherry pick only the things that will preserve their preconceived ideas. Now I'm going to give a very interesting example. There was a mockumentary. It's like a documentary, but it's a big lie, like it's a hoax. And it was called Conspiracy 58. You know that in Sweden they had the Football World Cup in 1958. That's where Pele became famous. I think he was 18 years old. And on the national TV show, on TV channel, SVT1, the national television, they showed that documentary or mockumentary without telling anyone that it wasn't true. So a lot of people believed it. And the thing is that they said, like, the World Cup never happened in Sweden. It was all made in a Hollywood studio, and you can see here this angle of the sun could not happen if this was in Gothenburg in the stadium because the sun's angle. So they had lots of really convincing arguments, a bit like some of the arguments that the flat earth have that are not logical, but they're seducing. And they were like giving a lot of interviewing people as well. And they said it was during the Cold War, and they made up a huge story. The day after, they came out clean and they said, like, this was just a big joke. But still, people said, no, you're onto something here. So they were convinced and they wanted to continue to believe it so bad that even in a neighboring country, in Denmark, there is like someone in 2014, years after the documentary, that said that they have proof that the World Cup in Sweden in 1958 never took place. Okay? This is what I say with misinformation. Someone made disinformation as a joke, as a hoax. People believed it, and now that they want to believe, they keep on trying to cherry pick the things that, yeah, it makes sense. And this is human nature. We cannot judge. It's part of who we are. And he made that to highlight the fact that in Sweden, there are people who are Holocaust deniers. They believe that, and he showed that, again, human nature will lead us to want to believe things that are a lie, even though it is purely fabricated. Similar example here I use in class, the Kensington runestone hoax. You know that there was a Swedish immigrant who moved to the United States in Minnesota. He forged something with runes, and then later on some scholars from Uppsala came there and analyzed that and said that can't be true because, like, you know, like in every language it evolves. If we look at some medieval text in Czech, I guess that it's not like the modern Czech of today. So the same thing was there. On the same plate, you had something that was correlated to what the Vikings were writing like in the year 800 and in the year 1200. So it cannot be on the same rune. So it was said that, okay, it is a forgery. And then it went crazy. There was even a suicide in that story. I mean, it was like a big, big deal. However, the American football team is still called the Vikings based on that hoax that people thought the Vikings were all the way in through the Great Lakes, all the way to Minnesota. And now it's the logo of their, and the name of their American football team. On top of that, the students, the first thing they notice before I tell the story, they say, oh, the Viking has horns. And he looks like a Gaulish warrior. They know in Sweden that the Vikings don't have horns. And then when I say like, oh, but wait a second. What if an archaeologist right here in Lund, we had like, that was a Viking village. Right here in Lund would discover one helmet with horns. Would you change your mind? And then the debate in class starts. And the first one would say, no, but it could be fake. It could be someone who put it there to test if we're gullible. And then other people say, yeah, but what if we analyze and it's true? So they have this way of thinking. They debate with each other, so this reciprocation system or step is achieved. And then by giving more examples, you create a way of thinking and a climate in the classroom that is safe, where they know that it's okay to argue respectfully, and they become great critical thinkers. And for this, I think that the key is to have, for sustainable learning like this, is to use a transdisciplinary approach, to mix the subject as much as possible, to stop fragmenting everything. I mean, we fragment so much things, like, okay, this is mathematics, and this is biology, and this is physical education, and each teacher guards the subject like a little fortress. This is a mistake. Life is a big mess. It's all intertwined. We should avoid, especially with young children, to try to specialize them too early. They need to learn to have range before we specialize them. And the key to that is to aim at the center here, transdisciplinary. If we try to mix all the subjects together, we're going to help them to become better critical thinkers, because critical thinking is not something that will be achieved if you only specialize in one thing. So by intertwining these school subjects as much as possible, we will improve this long-term knowledge acquisition. And it's not only the knowledge we will improve. Like I gave the examples before, it's the know-how. So if we have to learn something in school, it's the skill to identify or to search and get the right answers by having the right method of inquiry, which is the scientific method of inquiry. Let's play another game, something I like to do in technology, but I do it in the context of the Second World War, because then we talk about military history, and you're probably familiar with this one. But I ask the students, okay, this is all the data that was gathered by the American Army during World War II for the planes who were coming back to the base that were shot by the Germans. And now, your task is to reinforce the airplane to make it safer. And now they start to talk with each other, and of course, the first reflex is they will say, oh, but we need to reinforce where there's holes. I mean, they were probably shot from underneath. It's, yeah, good point. And then they think, and then you ask, just like using the Socratic method, just asking questions. Because you should never tell them the answer. It has to come from them. And you probably know the answer. If you look at this here, now I want your input. Where should we put this reinforcement?
The empty spaces.
Exactly, where there's no holes. And this is again, the survivorship bias. This applies to a lot of things, but by using something like this that's a bit inoffensive, that doesn't hurt their personal feelings, they see, oh yeah, we got it wrong. And most people agreed that we needed to put like more armoring at the back here on the tail and on the wings. But then they say like, oh yeah, it makes sense now. What you said makes sense, because like they probably have like all their munitions here. So if a bullet hits and it's going to cause a chain reaction, the tail will fall and they will crash. Oh yeah, it's true. Like in the front, the pilot has his legs like this, so he probably died and crashed. And there's the gas tanks. Oh, you see, sometimes the gas tank survived. They managed to make it to the base. And you see the motors. If the motors are hit, so, oh yeah, it's the opposite. So we were thinking the wrong way. Again, it's a great, great lesson, because actually we have to learn that survivorship bias can lead to overly optimistic beliefs because the failures are ignored. And here I re-explain who was the statistician who came up with, he was contradicting what the US military generals were asking to do, because they were asking to reinforce where there was holes. And he said, no, it's the opposite, because we fail to see those who never made it back to the base safely. And this is great, because right now, by giving this example, I just exemplified some of the failed arguments of those who said that COVID was just nothing. Because those The millions of people who died of COVID are not here to talk about their experience. I was hospitalized with COVID. I'm a healthy person. But a lot of people say, yeah, it was a big hoax and it was like whatever. We failed. We're being victim of the survivorship bias the same way. The same way when we talk about investment. We say, oh, we have to start our own little startup company. We'll make it big and we're over-optimistic. Like, hey, Bill Gates did it, and Steve Jobs, and Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk. Yeah, but are we considering the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people who started their company and failed? I don't say not to start your own companies here. You should. I encourage you to do it. But it doesn't mean that it's going to succeed. So we are over-optimistic about a lot of things, and we need to teach the kids these things because it's lifelong learning. They will themselves make the connections when they hear failed arguments by providing this continuously in different subjects. And here you have an example of technology and history put together. It makes sense. Just like we had geophysics before, geography and physics. But to achieve this, to make it really sustainable, I really am an adept of embodied cognition. Especially with the advent of AI, we have a body to express things. We need to still do hands-on stuff, become problem solvers, not only in the intellectual level. Critical thinking can also be nurtured by trying to solve problems with hands-on learning. One of my favorite material is 4D frame. It's this material that you see on the cover. It's made in South Korea. It's like a next step Lego. It's basically straws and connectors, and you can cut the straws, and you can build mechanical stuff, you can build robotics with it. I really love it. And there, by doing hands-on learning, I also try to nurture their critical thinking skills. So when you think of embodied cognition, there's a lot of tricks. But it requires to have lots of diversity, not only in the material you use, but also in your style of teaching. So teachers, future teachers, think about one thing. You cannot always do the same approach. I mean, a lot of people are told to say, like, okay, we are going to have like one way of teaching and it's going to be like this every day because they need a routine. Well, no, it's not true for all the students. We have a whole spectrum. We have like a beautiful neurodiversity in a classroom. We need to be able to reach every student, regardless of their level of competence or if they have a diagnosis or anything. And the way to do this is to vary your way of teaching. It could be on a Monday that you give a lecture where everyone is taking notes with a pen, which is embodied cognition as well. I mean, you have to have this, and I'm looking for the word in English, finmotorik in Swedish, motricity. And it's proven with the studies that someone who will take note with a pen will memorize something in the long-term memory more than if you transcribe on a computer, where you just transcribe. So encourage this, but then on Wednesday, then you encourage them to do something on the computer, to vary a little bit. And on Friday, you meet the same group again and you do something with your hands by varying something, by bringing them outside, by letting them discover nature, by making it like less redundant. Then you reach everybody, and you make it more interesting and more exciting. They know it's a new kind of routine, but with more variety. And this is the key, because when we're going to adapt all the school curriculums, maybe based on the Swedish model, I hope so, which is not perfect. Like I said before, it is a good intention, but the teachers are not trained to really apply it well. Technically, the Finns have a much better educational system, and the Finns are looking at Estonia. Estonia is the best one. But when we're going to start to include critical thinking, together with this experiential learning that I explained and the hands-on learning activities, we will prepare them for the new challenges. We cannot just let them be in front of a screen all the time, but we cannot reject the screen either. We need to include it there. And again, if they have good critical thinking skills, they will ask for that. They will say, oh, we're bored of being always on our laptop. We want to do something else. Because they know that now we have meta-analysis and scientific proof that this is the way to work. Lots of research and education has been made, and if you are basing your research on the meta-analysis made by John Hattie, for example, and those who criticize John Hattie, because we need to have like interesting debate on this. John Hattie is not a teacher, he's a statistician, but we need to have like an interesting middle ground, even though middle ground is often a logical fallacy. But for this, we need to have a great debate, exchange, and dare to learn from each other. I will finish with a quote, because my main hobby in life is to play music and record music. And I have two bands, and this is the band where I'm the front man. It's called Atlas Vault. And from the album Memento Mori, there is an interlude there called A Tribute to Carl Sagan. And it says that, the famous quote, "Science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way to skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility." This is what teachers need to do. We need to encourage the understanding. I don't use the word believe here, because believe requires a leap of faith. We need to understand, we need to think, and we need to let the students think for themselves. We need all around the world to nurture a society of free thinkers that are able to challenge us teachers and challenge the other generations in a fruitful debate that will lead to more, a better understanding of reality. I know I sound like an idealist, but we have everything to lose if we don't start now, because it's urgent. We see how important and how much time they spend on the internet today. And at the age of disinformation and at the age of rapid improvement in AI, it's our duty, not only the teachers in school, but we need to have people in the society asking for reform and inclusion. We need to pressure the policymakers to include critical thinking in every school curriculum. And I'm pretty sure that a country like the Czech Republic, being one of the most secular humanist countries in the world, I don't know if you already have it, but if you already have it, we still need to better train the teachers to teach it well. And like here, maybe I preach to the choir, but I myself need to learn it and to become better at it. And for this, I need to learn from other experience of other people and exchange. And now I'm here to listen to you. And if you want to learn more about the things that I'm talking about today, it's all available in the book I co-wrote with Charles Graham called Transformative Education. So now, Claire, it's your turn if there's questions.
Well, first of all, thank you, Philippe.
Thank you very much.
Please, if you have any questions, come up to the front. And if there's any, if you're watching us online, feel free to write up the questions, and Jelena will read them out loud. So I'll kick us off.
Yes.
With a very simple question. How and when did you learn to admit and say out loud that you are wrong?
Well, I did it to myself first. Like I said before, I went through a transformative process. That's why I called it transformative here. Because we can I think one of the best ways to learn is to be self-taught. I think the word in English is autodidact. I don't know if it's in Czech. But to teach yourself something. Backpacking, traveling. Claire mentioned that I was here when I was 18 years old, 31 years ago. So now you know my age. It's okay. Traveling like this, I left my hometown. I flew to Europe for the first time in my life, and I was trying to find jobs a bit everywhere, backpacking, traveling. I came back home completely transformed. I was not a Catholic anymore. When I reached India backpacking, I had too many questions. So I taught myself to admit that I was wrong. And this is the first thing, self-realization. It's not someone who told me, oh, you're wrong. It's the question that popped up in my mind when I was surrounded by 1 billion Hindu. What if I am wrong? What if I was I didn't choose to be baptized and be a Catholic. It's my parents and grandparents and this generation. I mean, it has a historical context. So by being exposed, by asking the right questions, so I admit that I was wrong. So I've never had any problem since then to admit that I was wrong because, I mean, I respect all religions. There's no problem, and I'm fascinated by them. But it's not for me. I think spirituality is a very intimate thing. And you can have spirituality without religion, but it's not my thing. So when someone teaches me something new, I think that every individual is an open book. You always have something to learn from someone. And I'm okay with admitting that I'm wrong. Socrates said it very well also. The only thing I know is that I don't know anything, which is probably a misquote. But I think it requires humility, and it's the key to learn, and to learn in a sustainable way. Thank you.
In your experience, how willing are teachers to learn to work with their own biases, and do you see any generational differences in that?
I think that the generational difference is huge. I mean, from my own experience, school has been completely transformed over the last few decades. And I've traveled a lot visiting different schools, and I saw lots of different school systems. Some are outstanding, and none is perfect. There's room for improvement in everything. But going from Korea to Finland, I mentioned before, and to what's going on in Canada now, they are like exceptional schools, but I would say that the average is not so good. But back in the days, we had a much more standardized teaching way, which was by the book. A lot of sitting, passive. The kids were often extremely bored. And we were rewarded for being like parrots, like the bird, you know, just repeating what we were told. I remember having good grades because I could repeat almost like word for word what my teacher was saying, and that was brilliant. But if someone would do this in my class nowadays, it would be completely different. I would say the comment, you're just repeating what I said. You're not showing me any analytical skills, any reflection skills. You're not making comparisons, or you're not showing me what are the differences or the similarities in something. You're just repeating what I said in class. That's not what you're here for. You're here to learn to think for yourself. And if I would have done that back in the days when like the nuns and the priests were my teachers, I would have been discouraged to do that. I would have lowered my grade. So yes, the education has changed a lot. This generational shift, I don't know if it's the case here. I guess that for political and ideological reasons, things have changed a lot here since 1989. Mm-hmm. So I imagine that yes, there is a huge paradigm shift in education, but we are ready for a new one. Especially after the pandemic now, we need to use the COVID-19 pandemic as a launch pad for a renewal in education. We have all this technology, this revolution with AI as well. We need to rethink education and basically base everything on tangible, demonstrable facts that are coming from research and education. Like I mentioned, the meta-analysis that we have in education. So teaching is not an art, it is a science. We need to go to the sources, reliable sources, and just apply it. And that's why, when I wrote the book here, I made sure that what we do is not just experimental, it is backed up by research.
Do we have any questions from the audience here or online?
Nothing online, but I will have. There are people like me or Claire. We are not in schools every day, but we have some programs for children, working with them one day in a year or something like that, or I'm leading some science works for them. So what would you think is the most important thing that we can give them during this limited time, not working with them every day, but only for a quite limited number of hours? What's the most important thing that we can do?
Good question. I know that Pontus does that in Sweden as well. He came to my school for a day. And I think the most important thing is not necessarily the content you will use. is to give them like something to remember. Make sure that they have fun when they do it. Make them participate. Actually, I'm not doing a good job right now because I've been lecturing most of the time, but I think that what works the best is to create interaction. I should have involved you more. We could have done a few hands-on things here together. Even could have, if I would have brought some popsicle sticks, we could have built a Da Vinci bridge together, and I would be able to demonstrate how critical thinking can be used in engineering. So here I admit my failure, but make them have fun. I think this is very important. When you come there for a day, you're not there to give a sermon, like I'm doing now. You're there to really involve them and make them have fun, so they will remember and they will develop a way of thinking. Again, provide examples, and if it's a day of training, I think the main target should be the teachers in the first place.
So, any other questions?
So thank you for the talk. I'm just curious, how do you become the greatest teacher, or how do you win this award? Like, is there a vote? Is there a committee? Is there a score or something? So how does this work?
I personally don't really know why, but no, it's not a vote. There's juries. I mean, the first one in 2020, first of all, it's because my students started to win a lot of contests. And I think, like, I've had the chance of having wonderful students, and of course, like, coaching them in all these contests. It showed that what we were doing in class probably works, because they won, like, science contests. Were not necessarily things that are, like, related to my subject, the subject I teach. And they end up in the newspaper, and the TV came, and the radio. So it's always like the interview, and having exposure like this, then eventually the colleagues, the parents nominated me, and the jury decided to give me the award. And in a way, I think that the fact that I'm an immigrant in Sweden as well, Sweden tries to show that it's a very inclusive society, so I think that in the process, it helped me a little bit. And then later on, after this, it becomes a snowball effect. But then again, I didn't stop like this, because my students are still on a winning streak. This year, they won almost everything. There is even like the cooking challenge, and I have nothing to do with that. But we create this mindset because it's collaborative, it's transdisciplinary. My colleague who's teaching them home economics, she encouraged the students to be creative. So this creative process that we initiated by merging these subjects together led to that victory. We won another big, first and third place in a big science contest called Spinning Circle. Again, it gives us a lot of exposure. Now, 4 students have qualified for the IMSCC, so they will travel. I will probably travel with them to South Korea again to compete internationally. So this happens that bring a lot of attention to our school, and de facto a lot of attention to me. So being named the best teacher in Sweden, I'm sure I'm not the best teacher in Sweden, but this marketing aspect of having my face on covers of magazines, and then it creates a snowball effect, and then like this helps also, like now they put my face on magazines, like I said before. The next contest is, oh yeah, but there's this good teacher in Lund, let's hear about him and let's have an interview with him, and then the next year they nominate for another award, and this has to stop. But I'm very humble for that, but I want to use this opportunity, not for my own ego. Now it's giving me a launch pad to talk about things that are important in education. So I'm lucky that I've got this exposure now, because I can share and also learn from people from all around the world.
So as we heard, Philippe doesn't want any more awards. So we have a question from the stream.
There's a comment online, so I will read it into this. It seems to me that during 3 years experience with teaching at an upper secondary school, the audience more prone to misinformation are older teachers than students.
It's true. It's true. Absolutely, you're right. And like when I mentioned with the pictures, the kids are much better at identifying clickbait because they spend so much time online. They are very savvy in technology. And let me be clear again. I think that the investment of time and energy we're putting in schools is not only for that generation. I think that, again, we've all experienced conflicts or misunderstanding or divergence of opinions with family members. It can be like extended family sometimes. But I think that we are more prone to change our mind if we have a civilized argument with someone we truly love. And I think that the investment, we plant seeds there, and we need the children to initiate a fruitful debate with their parents, their grandparents, and the other generations who are more prone, like the person online said, to believe in conspiracy theories or in misinformation or disinformation.
All right, well, we are out of time for today, but thank you so much again for coming and giving us this lecture. Please, one more round of applause.
Thank you very much.
So this has been the last lecture of this season of our talks, Science Contra Irrationality. We look forward to seeing you again in September. And we will post our schedule online of all the wonderful people we will have come and lecture. But this was an amazing ending of our whole cycle of the 2022 to 2023. So thank you again. And yeah, if you feel like joining Philippe for a glass of beer, we will take him there. And everyone have a... Jedno pivo, prosím. Exactly. And everyone have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm up for it.
It just appeared. So before we go,
yes.
Yeah, it's how to cope with the postmodern belief in the very concept of truthfulness in educational system. Yeah.
Oh, so
great
simple
question.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a great question. A very, very, very good question. Had to come last. Absolutely. There's no absolute truth, and it's true what the person says here. Like I said, being a teacher and being a member of this like, well, any institution, we ought to be very humble, I repeat it again, because the truth might change, and what we need to teach the students and the teachers is that if we are explaining well what I said before, the superiority of the scientific method of inquiry, and everything that it implies, is that eventually we might, it is a self-regulating process that will eventually be improved. To answer that question, that great question, is that I mentioned the Dunning-Kruger effect before, and I had the chance to meet a Nobel Prize winner, Saul Perlmutter, the person who discovered that the universe expands faster and faster. And he himself is one of the most humble person I know, because he really insists on the fact that the more I learn, the more I realize that there's so much more I don't understand. And so to be too arrogant about like, okay, this is the right thing to do, well, maybe I sounded a bit arrogant, and I'm sorry about that when I say like we have to base our practice on meta-analysis and whatsoever. It could change. But we need to be able to do, like in the dilemma exercise, when presented with new facts that are convincing, we need to adopt them, and we need to be able to falsify, to use the scientific method in everything. Like I said, teaching is an art, but first of all, it should be a science, and we should basically be ready to adapt and change. And I think this period in history right now, with the end of the pandemic, is the right time to do it, especially with the advent of this rapid development, exponential development in artificial intelligence. We need critical thinking more than ever. Dziękuję.
Thank you.